All right, everyone. It is 3 o'clock. I think everyone's here, and we are happy to get started. So, welcome back from the crazy holiday season, everyone. I hope you had a wonderful season and a great new year. We're excited to be back with our first webinar of the year, and we thought we would combine two into one this time. So, we're going to be going over some holiday recap items to talk about some of the numbers, trends, and insights we found from this past holiday season, as well as sharing 7 new search marketing hacks that you can use to be successful in 2018 and beyond. So before we get started, the first thing we're going to be doing is looking at some results by region. We're going to break down some of the insights we've seen across the country. We're then going to share some interesting trends that we've noticed with you. We're then going to go into the 7 search marketing hacks. We'll share some further reading in case any of you want to dig a little bit deeper. And then we'll save a few minutes at the end for some question and answer. Your speakers today include myself. My name is Steve Murphy. I am the Director of Marketing at NetElixir, as well as Manish Mohan, who is our Head of Paid Media. Manish will be joining us to share some interesting client stories that pertain to the hacks that we have and give a little bit more of an expert's opinion on some of the interesting things that we'll be recommending today. Now, before we get started, for those of you who are new to NetElixir, I want to give you a brief introduction. NetElixir is a specialist retail search marketing agency. And one thing that we believe helps us differentiate ourselves is that we're decoding what makes people click. We understand that online marketing isn't just about clicks and website traffic and page views, but at the end of the day, it's real people trying to connect with brands to find the products and services that make their lives better. And it's our job to help figure out the motivations and the inspirations and what's driving those people to click, to buy, and to come back and buy again. We are a team of 120 plus fanatically analytical search marketers operating in 3 countries around the world. We've worked with over 300 retail brands over the past 13 and soon to be 14 years in business, including some of the largest and most iconic brands across different retail categories. We're a Google Premier partner, a Bing Select agency, and a proud partner of UPS. Now to get right into the meat and potatoes. So the first thing I wanted to share today is some of the results and trends we saw from the 2017 holiday season. So overall, we saw that US e-commerce sales went up by 13% this year. Now, for those of you who were joining us in some of our previous webinars, you'll know that we were a little bit conservative, right? I know a lot of the other analysts and industry firms were saying that they were predicting 17 or 18%. We thought that was a little too aggressive. Our prediction was actually for 10% this year. So luckily for us, we were a little bit lower than what we actually saw. And we saw that across the country, the trend was a 13% growth over last year. What's really interesting is when we break this down by region, you'll see that the Northeast, which is a pretty mature market in terms of e-commerce sales, saw some very moderate growth of about 11.4%. But where we really see some of the big gains is from the southern states, the Southeast and the Central South states. This was very interesting because when you look at the 24.3% growth, it's one that's nearly double what we saw nationally, and it continues a trend that we saw both last year and over the Thanksgiving weekend and Cyber Monday webinar that we did back in November of 2017. What's interesting is that we tried to dig deeper and see if we can explain this, and a very cool insight we saw from McKinsey was that Florida Texas, both Carolinas, Georgia, and Oklahoma all rank in the top 15 fastest growing state economies. So there's a lot of workforce development going there, a lot of new spending, and a lot of investment in growth in those states. And according to the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, we also saw that Orlando, Nashville, Charlotte, Raleigh, Jacksonville, and Austin were all in the top 10 fastest growing cities in the country as well. So for those of you who are looking for an opportunity to jump into some emerging growth markets, we do highly recommend you take a peek at some of those growing metro centers in the South, because it's very, very interesting that they continue to grow in each of these different analyses that we do here at NetElixir. So keep an eye on those regions and consider investing for growth there. Now, when we break this down and go purely into the key metrics for paid search from the holiday season, and just a quick note on our methodology, this is across 400 million search visits across our portfolio of clients, which spans most major categories in retail. So this is a pretty significant data set that we have reviewed. We saw overall that average CPCs increased 14.2%, impressions went up 12.8%, conversions went up 15.5%, and average order value increased 19.4%, all over a similar data set from last year. I do want to point out a couple really interesting things here. The first being the increase in CPCs. Now, I think a lot of you are familiar with the fact that CPCs continue to rise each year. What's interesting is that in the past year, we thought there were two main reasons we saw such a significant increase, right, of 14% rather than a single-digit one. The first is that comes directly from our Google reps, and that was that over the past year, ad inventory has decreased in terms of the amount of placements from 11 to 7 on the SERPs, while ad depth, which is the number of ads circulating in the auction, has increased significantly. And because of that, the increase in the competition in the auction has risen CPCs. Another less obvious trend that we saw was that the rise in mobile adoption and the rise of more mobile advertisers has caused the gap between mobile CPCs and desktop CPCs to decrease. So when we did this analysis last year, we saw that mobile CPCs were about 35% less expensive than the same desktop counterparts. This year, that gap has actually dropped to about 15 and 16% when we account for some of our big outliers. So as mobile CPCs continue to inch closer to their desktop counterparts, I think we'll continue to see some of those sharp increases in the overall growth. Another area we wanted to really take a look at was the nearly 20% increase in average order value. Right, this was something that we didn't expect to see such a large number, especially with all the news stories going around about, Amazon and price cutting and things like that. So we wanted to take a little bit deeper look at it. One of the variables we thought that may have caused this phenomena was looking at value of cart items versus quantity of cart items. Now, what came to light when we crunched the numbers was that the value of each individual item in the cart was actually flat year over year. We think this has to do with a lot of coupons due to the increased competition. Advertisers are finding they have to, compete on price a little bit more, and especially with Amazon playing such a big role in both the marketplace and in the news media. So we actually saw it was flat, and in some categories, the price of each individual item in the cart was decreasing by a percentage point or two. What really made the difference in such a big jump this year for average order value was the number of items in the cart. We think the reason for this is that, number one, a lot of people are doing a larger percentage of their holiday shopping online. So they feel comfortable adding more items to the cart because they're doing a larger percentage share of their shopping here. Another reason that we thought may be a contributing factor, especially for some of our clients, was that a lot of retailers are playing around with shipping thresholds. So instead of, say, offering free shipping at $50, they're now offering free shipping at $60 or $70. And because of this, consumers trying to get free shipping are adding more items to the cart to hit those thresholds. So these are some interesting trends that we think you should really pay attention to. And we're interested to see if we continue to see this double-digit growth in years to come, or if this year is a bit of an anomaly with all the change that we've seen swirling in the industry. Quickly, I wanted to go over to just some of the interesting insights around mobile. So when we looked at the mobile share of visits this year, what percentage of website visits were mobile versus 2016, we saw there was a pretty large increase, and especially in some categories like apparel, where it really skyrocketed this year. We think this is because obviously there's more connected devices on the market. More people are doing in-the-moment shopping, and a lot of people are relying on their phones for casual research. Think about folks that are commuters, for example, and want to research some new purchases on their way to work instead of just blankly staring across them on the train. But interestingly enough, the mobile share of sales, while it has grown at a smaller rate than the mobile share of visits. Now, I'll be honest with you, we don't necessarily have data to back up exactly why this is happening, but we do have a few hypotheses that I think are pretty strong. The first being that there is a trend of folks doing their research online, but then making a purchase in the store. So that's usually not something that we can track from an online mobile visit to an in-store purchase, but it is something to consider for those of you who are taking an omni-channel approach in 2018 and beyond. Secondly, we think that even though retailers have gotten much better at purchasing on their phones, it's still considerably easier to input your credit card details and navigate the checkout process on the desktop. One thing we did notice, however, was that for some categories, especially things like cosmetics, which are high velocity products that people continuously buy and are a little bit more spontaneous, we did see a much larger leap than products, say, in the electronic space, where there's a lot more research involved in the sales cycle. So that is something to take notice of, that mobile share of visits is becoming more and more important. However, you still shouldn't ignore desktop and in-store purchases when it comes to finally making the sale. So now that we've gone over some of the holiday trends, I want to take the second half of this webinar to really talk about some of the SEM hacks that you can use in 2018 to get even better. So jumping right in, the first hack we wanted to share was sacrificing short-term profits to secure long-term customers. So how does this work? The idea behind this is targeting customers of a competitor with either a larger market share than you or with a much different customer base than you have. Then make them an offer they can't refuse. For example, a heavy discount, generous bundling offers, free shipping offers, something that would really attract your competition's customers away from them and towards your brand, even if that comes at a short-term loss in profits or margins on your products. We then ask you to actively test these special offers against your generic offers to see if you can realize some incremental improvements. And over towards the end of the campaign, take those new customers you've acquired and add them into your retargeting list or email marketing list to try to convert them into long-term customers. I'm now going to share the mic with Manish, who's going to share a real customer story of how one of our clients did this and what the result was.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve. It's always exciting to share some actual success stories that we were able to drive for our clients using these hacks. So as Steve mentioned, the concept here was to use a specific offer and go after a particular competitor. We applied this hack two times. One was in 2016 for the holiday season, and then again last year in Q4. We did this for a high-end specialty gourmet client, wherein we identified a specific competitor who had a sweet spot at a different price point. Our client historically had an average order value upwards of $100. We worked with our client to come up with a specific product bundle, which was priced around the $60 to $70 price point. As all experiments go, we were absolutely not sure of what the outcome will be as we started on it, but we tested this particular offer and against all the other generic offers that were there on the website. At the end of the holiday season, we walked away with some interesting results. The click-through rate on that new product bundle that we came up with was 3 times higher than every other offer that was there on their website. Not just that, at the end of the holiday season, of all the non-brand orders that we generated for them, 57% came in from just that one product bundle that we had designed for the holiday season. Understandably, as Steve was mentioning, we had to settle with a 30% lower average order value in that first purchase, which was an intentional hit that we took in order to drive some new customers to the website. Now, as I said in the beginning, we did this twice, once in 2016 and then in 2017. The reason we could do it again last year was because 80% of those new customers who were acquired in 2016 came back at least once last year and made a second purchase, which in itself makes up for that loss that we incur in the first sale and gives you a long-term customer.
Hack number 2 is one that involves using real-time analytics instead of your traditional calendar to capture greater value. What do I mean by this? When we talk about demand, a lot of times marketers depend on the days that are supposed to be busy for when they're bidding the most or when they're putting the most effort into their paid campaigns. For example, you anticipate that Black Friday is going to be the busiest day, right? You anticipate that a few days before Christmas is going to be very, very busy. Unfortunately, this anticipated or scheduled demand rarely aligns with true demand and market forces. This comes from a lot of reasons, right? It could be that your competitor launches an early ad campaign and starts pushing their products and in general, your type of industry earlier on than you expected, causing more people to start searching earlier on in the process. It could be weather, there could be snowstorms, there could be hurricanes, there could be any number of natural reasons for pushing around demand, right? There can be supply chain influences. Say, for example, your shipping company changes the last day that you can order and have your gifts arrive for Christmas or Mother's Day or Father's Day or any other major holiday in the shipping business. All right, so what we recommend that you do here is first to build a real-time dashboard in Google Analytics so that when you're monitoring, you can see any sudden spikes and start to take advantage of them. We also recommend that you create alerts both in Google Analytics and in any other tracking software you have, so that if a certain threshold is met, for example, 30 or 40% more traffic than anticipated, it can alert your team to jump in. We also recommend to stagger your staffing to account for some of these off-peak hours and surprise alerts, especially around holidays or key seasons for your business.
Right. For one of the fast fashion apparel clients that we work with, we actually created some interesting dashboards well in advance. We had all the forecasting done down to every single hour through the holiday week. But as again Steve was mentioning, there are always surprises. The Black Friday this year started off slower than we anticipated, and we were constantly monitoring the real-time traffic using Google Analytics. And the numbers on Black Friday did not turn out to be as we expected it to. And interestingly, right around 6 a.m. on the Saturday following Black Friday, there was an instant ramp up of traffic on the website. Because we were monitoring the real time traffic in analytics, and we had built some thresholds well in advance, which could differ from one website to another. For your business, maybe 1,000 visits at any point in time may mean that the floodgates have opened. For a larger company, maybe that threshold could be 2,000. And as soon as we saw that, because we were prepared, we had the flexibility to move around budgets. And because Black Friday was softer than what we expected, we were quick to respond to that need and move over all the budgets from paid campaigns from Friday over to Saturday. And at the end of it, we ended that Saturday at 30% higher sales than what we had forecasted.
Great. And one quick note on that. Um, from a Google Analytics perspective, those of you who rely on that, they have some great real-time analytics. There is some, there are some restrictions on the alerts. I believe they are daily alerts. They're not real-time alerts. However, if you do a little Googling or reach out to us after this, there are some additional ways that you can build in some real-time alerts. So feel free to reach out to us and we'll share some ideas with you. The third hack we want to focus on is applying regional adjustments to take advantage of different purchase behaviors, right? So I think all of you probably know this from looking at your analytics, but customers in different regions often have different shopping habits. So a catch-all campaign that's spread across the nation isn't necessarily the most efficient way to use your paid search marketing dollars. What we recommend you do is to carefully dig through your analytics and start to understand who your customers are in different regions and how they like to shop. We then recommend that you build a segmentation grid of those customers by region with their preferred products, preferred categories, things like that, and start to map that grid with different offers and sales to test against your generic offers and sales. If you're an international player, right, this also works across countries. And in this case, we consider using a cultural map as well, because as many of you know, in the case, for example, the United States and Mexico and Canada, even though they're in close proximity, the cultures can be wildly different, and so can the purchasing habits.
So we applied this hack for, again, one of our existing clients who was into consumer electronics. And because we have been working with them for over 5 years now, we had a ton of data that we could use here, based on which we identified some regional insights. And interestingly, what we found was for Latin America, the demand for consumer end products was a lot higher than ones that were designed specifically for a business use. And this insight was specifically applied to all the paid search campaigns. And what I mean by that is, even if you have, let's say, a 20% off site-wide offer, rather than just saying that it's 20% off site-wide, if you know that historically that region has shown an inclination towards buying a specific set of products, can we customize or tailor the ad copy to say that it's 20% off on consumer electronics? It sounds like a very simple hack, but the impact was huge. We tested that sort of an ad copy versus a generic offer where you're trying to appeal to the entire population out there. And the results were that we ended up generating 45% higher revenues in the LATAM area because of this specific hack.
Great. And one thing that we'll recommend to those of you who do deal internationally, check out netelixir.com/Hofstede. Here it details some of the ways that we use the Hofstede cultural dimensions theory, which measures how different cultures and societies communicate. We've actually applied this academic framework to a lot of our paid search clients, and we've seen some really interesting results. So for those of you who want to dig a little deeper, check out netelixir.com/Hofstede. Hack number 4 deals with location, 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 right? Everyone has probably heard that. It's one of the fundamental principles of retail, is that location is everything when it comes to brick and mortars. But it's also very important now when it comes to paid search, right? As we mentioned earlier, mobile traffic is continuing to increase at a pretty significant rate year over year. And the number of connected devices and location tracking methods have created really unique possibilities for us to target. So I'm going to share a few of those with you here. For those of you who are brick and mortar retailers, why not create ads that take advantage of close proximity? For example, anyone within a 10-mile radius that's searching for your brand, you can offer ad copy that tells them they can get same-day pickup or same-day delivery versus anyone outside of that 10-mile range who you would then promote your normal next day or 3-day delivery rates. You can also use GPS geofencing to serve ads to yourself, to nearby customers, or even target customers at competitor stores, right? So if you're able to find out the coordinates that you want to target, say, of a competitor, you can start feeding more aggressive ads to customers searching within those places. Maybe those people are showrooming. The third thing we would do is consider unique locational advantages. For example, we did have one client who had a competitor based in Texas. And because that competitor was based there, Texas customers had to pay sales tax on any purchases. We found a little loophole that this client of ours, since they weren't based in Texas, could offer that as an instant discount since the customers wouldn't have to pay that. So that's one of those really unique location opportunities that we encourage you to look for and take advantage of whenever possible.
Absolutely. Quick delivery or fast delivery has kind of become a norm thanks to Amazon. So for one of our clients who are into online gifting, same day delivery was an increasingly popular option among their customers. And what we realized was, by having a specific campaign around same day delivery for mobile shoppers, it that kind of made a lot of sense. But what that also means is, any business that's offering same day delivery as an option usually also has a cutoff, because you cannot deliver those orders beyond that particular threshold time. So we created a standalone campaign for same day delivery, and we switched ads roughly at around 12 noon, beyond which they could not deliver orders on that day. And then what we realized was, after 9 p.m., same day delivery searches somehow started converting better. And that's when we realized that people who are actually searching for same day delivery after 9 p.m. are actually looking for orders to be delivered on the next day. It's just that same day happens to be the way they search for it. Using that as a tactic and having the specific campaign, we were able to double the orders that came in from that particular campaign. And we applied similar tactics for another client, which was a family based business based on a particular location. And what we realized was, they could use their location as an advantage to go against a national reseller who was understandably much bigger than them. So what happened is, if someone searches for that competitor in a 5 mile radius of the store, we show an ad that talks about same day pickup or next day shipping, which none of their competitors could have offered as a service. And we ended up generating a 4x conversion rate by having that as a specific tactic.
The next hack we want to share with you is paying a lot closer attention to time zones and really paying attention to how poorly AdWords can sometimes handle them. So, as many of us know, working in AdWords, it's one of the most powerful marketing tools available. However, there are some restrictions and some very interesting quirks when it comes to time zone differences. For example, when you have a sale that expires at midnight, it's important to plan your budget and inventory to last through all time zones. Now, those of you on the West Coast might not have to worry about that as much, but for East Coast companies, if you expire your sale at midnight, because that's when it shows up in your time zone, it's only 9 p.m. on the West Coast, and you could be missing some really, really valuable customers across the country that would have been shopping. In fact, we've seen that for some of our customers' big sales, up to 30% of purchases tend to happen in the last 6 hours of the sale. So by cutting off 3 hours of that, you're really missing out on opportunities because of that time zone difference. We also would recommend to use manual overrides of bid modifiers to simulate account level customizations. So, for example, if you note that between 3 and 6 a.m. in California and the West Coast, most of your customers aren't really shopping and the clicks aren't as valuable, you might apply a negative 30% bid modifier across your account. Now, unfortunately, that's not something that you can take off for your New York, New Jersey, or other East Coast customers. And it's 9 a.m. there. So you might be missing 6 to 9 a.m., you might be missing a lot of opportunity. So instead, we recommend using a manual override to add 30% back to those certain specific regions, again, to make up for a lack of flexibility from AdWords itself.
Right. So I think, Steve, you explained that pretty well.
Oh, great.
So yeah, we did this for one of our clients, again, based on the West Coast, but as Steve explained pretty well, morning hours, are, we tend to call them the transition hours, 5 a.m. to 8 a.m. or even 9 p.m. to 12 midnight, are those hours when your end customers may be doing different things depending on which time zone they are in. So by applying that manual override for one of our clients, what we were able to do is between 5 a.m. and 8 a.m., we ended up generating 20% higher orders from New York, which was their second highest revenue generating state. But before we had this manual override, the fact was New York customers did not see ads from our client because there was a negative bid modifier in place, just because 5 a.m. was not really a top converting hour on the West Coast.
Great. Sorry for stealing your thunder there, Manish. The next hack we want to share, number 6 of 7 for those of you looking at the clock, is swiping right for fewer but better new customers. So not all of you, we understand, have the budget of a Procter & Gamble. You can't just continue to spend and spend and spend in a war of attrition just to get new customers. So what we recommend you do to be more efficient in new customer acquisition is setting up similar audiences of your existing customers through AdWords. So this might be inputting your email list. This might be based on tracking website visitors, right? But creating that similar audience and then adding additional modifiers such as income levels, such as gender, such as age or other demographics to get even more specific. Finally, we then recommend you switch to a target and bid campaign to focus on this new segment and try to acquire these high value new customers.
Great. We again applied this specific hack, in fact, all 3 that Steve just mentioned for one of our clients in the apparel space, who was specifically into the discounted apparel space. And what that means is ROI or ROAS becomes much more important. And instead of going randomly after all the new customers out there, we went after a curated list. And at the end of the 3-month test period, the results that we saw were a 2x click-through rate from the similar audiences, 20% higher conversion rate, and a 30% lower cost to spend ratio. So what that meant is had we spent all the incremental dollars that we had blindly on all the new customers out there, that would have been a massive hit on the overall margins. So if you are planning to invest incremental dollars for new customer acquisition on paid search, I think this is the right way to do it. And going after a smaller list of much more qualified new customers should be the direction that you should take.
And finally, we're coming to our last hack, and this is for those of you on the creative side, and it's customizing ad copy regularly to align with your season's promotions and offers. So we know a lot of you spend a lot of time developing very good ad copy, but what we find is a lot of the times, once that ad copy is written, there's not much modified to it because a lot of the attention is spent on the numbers side of the business, right? Optimizing for click-through rates, optimizing, doing different targeting options, right? So sometimes that copy can get lost in the fold. What we recommend you do is definitely continue to focus on writing main ad copy that pushes your brand and your site-wide promotions, but using some of the other features within your ad copies, such as your site links, to test new and interesting ways to attract customers. For example, you might use site links with seasonal words such as Black Friday or Christmas or Mother's Day to attract new customers. Let them know that this is the time to shop from you for that holiday. While you might use top products in your site links to target existing customers and help them navigate where they're going more quickly, right? This doesn't have to be something that you update every day, but it should be something that you're regularly testing against your generic site links and generic copy to see what performance increases you can have.
Right. So we tested these two concepts. One was using seasonal words in the cycling copy, and also using some information about top selling products for a food and gourmet client of ours. And again, this was tested specifically during the holiday period. But as Steve mentioned, this is something that does not necessarily have to be done in Q4. This can be done during any point in time. We ended up seeing a 57% higher click-through rate by just using the word Christmas in one of the site links. And when we ended up using the top selling product in the site link, the click-through rate was 36% higher. So though any ad copy recommendations might seem very generic and basic, it's important not to lose sight of these basic things. But even in the holiday rush, when the general tendency is to just have one content calendar and have all the ads talk about the same offer, it's important to remember that customers do like to read what you have on paid search ads, and ensure that you talk to a wider audience with everything that you have on your website.
Great. Now, this was some of the 7 most exciting hacks that we wanted to share with you now, but we have a lot more. As I mentioned, we have over 120 people on our team, always sharing different ideas. One way you can follow up is by checking out our Future of Search Marketing ebook by going to netelixir.com/future. It shares 10 other ideas that we have and predictions for the future of search. Or for those of you who would like a tailored or custom audit of your account, please feel free to reach out to us by going to our website and filling out a form, or reaching out directly after this webinar. And we'd be happy to share some time, look through your own AdWords account, and see what ideas we have to help you grow. Now I'd like to take the next minute or two that we have left to answer any questions from the crowd. Okay. Let me pull up my questions pane. I see we have a couple popped in here. Okay. So regarding hack number 6, since you are using target and bid setting, are you using separate campaigns to target the similar audiences?
Yes, that's a great question. There are 2 ways to do it. You can use a target and bid option and create a standalone campaign to talk to those customers, or within the same campaign, you can create multiple ad groups. And now that target and bid option is available at an ad group level, you can have those two segments being tailored from the same campaign as well.
Great. Thank you, Manish. Next question. You talked about the increased competition in Google this year as being a reason that CPCs were increasing. Do you have any insight into the average number of competitors that we've seen this holiday season?
Right. So it does vary from one vertical to another. We do encourage using auction insights in Google on an ongoing basis. And that was something that we kept a constant track of in the holiday season. And for most of our clients who were in a competitive space, we saw anywhere from 8 to 12 retailers bidding on their terms. And one of the interesting things that we saw in Q4 this year was there were a set of new companies that just came out of nowhere, disrupted that space. Understandably, bad news for us because they take up the CPCs in that space. And then exactly after the holiday season, they just vanish. So that's what we saw this year.
Great. Thank you, Manish. We're at about the 44.5-minute mark, so I want to let you all go so we can stay right on time. If you have any additional questions, again, feel free to reach out to us directly. You can send your questions to university@netelixir.com or simply come to our website, www.netelixir.com, and fill out a form. We thank you all for joining us today, and hope you join us for the rest of our webinars this year, in which I believe we'll be sharing some equally important and insightful information with you. Thanks, everyone, and Happy New Year.